What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video on our legend car here. We're right in the middle of our off season, in the middle of December, getting ready to push into the new year. And I gotta be honest, we're quite a bit behind on the car right now than where I'd like to be. We haven't even touched a majority of the suspension. All we really did was take the shocks off and replace them with some radius rods, but I'd really like to tackle hopefully tearing apart the rest of the front suspension on both sides and take a look at the Heims, make sure that there's no excessive play in them or anything like that, make sure all of our radius rods are straight, and honestly take a look at this radiator and, you know, straighten up a lot of the fins that are probably bent up from all the rubber on the track that probably knocked them out of the way. We also really got to take a decent look at these shocks right now, because I don't know how easy it is to tell, but this one right here and this one right here look like they've leaked quite a bit. And of course these are AFCOs. These are the first batch that came out from what I've been told, and obviously there's going to be issues with them. I wasn't expecting anything to be perfect, but of course we're going to end up taking these up to our dealer in Denver and have him dyno test these and make sure that they're good. Otherwise we'll send them off to AFCO and hopefully get these rebuilt before our season starts. Now, I've been told that leaking on these shocks has been a pretty common issue by quite a few people, and obviously that's not helping out anyone's case either at US Legend Cars or AFCO or anything like that. So hopefully this is an issue that they can take care of pretty soon. I know that AFCO is now the only way that you can get brand new manufactured shocks because they are the sole supplier. Bilstein no longer has that contract, so unfortunately they don't have the ability to sit here and be the shock for US Legend Cars anymore. But I know a lot of people who are still running those over these, and even people who do own the new AFCOs, they are still choosing to run the Bilsteins because not only do they have more predictability, but it's something that they've driven on for the past however many years that they've been the shocks for Legend Cars, that, you know, going to the AFCOs, they didn't really feel the benefit that they wanted to see at our track. And obviously shocks are personal preference for everyone, but ideally when you switch suppliers like that, you want it to benefit not only everyone on track, but you also want it to be cost effective for everyone, since the Legend Cars are still supposed to be the inexpensive entry to racing. Now obviously people have lost sight of that quite a bit, but for the most part I still think the Legend Cars are still probably one of the cheapest ways to get into racing, but I won't get into that all that well this video. Unfortunately with the AFCOs, you do see they do have this INEX seal right here, but because of how the spring sits on this collar and how it moves up and down on the shock, it's starting to rub away at our seal right here, and I don't see it like that on any others. This one was our right front shock, so the one that actually saw the most lateral movement compared to all the others. But I don't know how difficult it is to see, but there is quite a bit of fluid right there on the top of the shock, and pretty decent amount right there on the rod. So hopefully that's something that AFCO can look into, and I genuinely hope that this is something that they can take care of and fix. Like I said, we'll get these shocks dynoed up again to make sure that the amount of fluid that they lost isn't so severe that, you know, that it ends up changing their rate, you know, and we'd really like to avoid having to get these rebuilt with less than a year on them, but if we have to, it is what it is. Now, I personally haven't spent enough time on the Bilsteins and on the AFCOs to really determine whether or not these are better than the other, especially since my old car that had the Bilsteins was a 1250 car, and we obviously stepped up to an FZ09 car with these shocks. So we're still learning everything that we can possibly learn. Trying our best to make the best decisions for ourselves in our program, but also try to be as competitive as we can with what we do know, which honestly isn't a ton. You know, our only racing experience before these legend cars was riding around in a 4-cylinder car on a quarter-mile track with about 20 degrees of banking, so those were incredibly easy to drive, and these ones not so much compared to that. So definitely quite a huge jump in the learning curve, but we'll go ahead and check out our Heims. These ones don't have a ton of play. There is a tiny amount, but it's not super bad. I don't think that these are regreasable. I think that these do get rebuilt though when you do send them out if they need to. So for those of you that are here in Colorado, I'm sure many of you have probably heard, but if you haven't, our dealer at Leary Racing Products and Shock Shop is moving out of the shop that they're in right now, and we'll actually be opening up at a different location. So if you are planning to go to where his old shop was, you'll likely not find him there. Sucks for us because being so far south in Colorado, it now makes our drive a little bit longer to go to the dealer and get what we need to do. But you know, that's kind of the game you have to play with legend cars here and the scarcity of dealers that we have. Because I'm pretty sure our next closest dealer is either the guys up in Montana or the guys down in Vegas. So we don't really have much of a choice here. In fact, our dealer here supplies everyone who races here in Denver, as well as those that race in Cheyenne and Gearing, Nebraska. Now we're actually running 3 4-5 shocks and then 1 3-3 shock. This is just the combination that was recommended by our dealer, and with his vast knowledge of shocks, we kind of went with it. You know, the spring setup is also based on what his recommendations were, so we were just kind of playing around with it and trying to figure out what was best for us. I know a lot of people are switching out that 3-3 and either just replacing it with another 4-5 or moving that 3-3 to a different corner on the car, which we may end up doing during our first practice just to see. I mean, obviously we'll go back to our original setup for our first practice as long as these don't have to be rebuilt. But if we still feel like our car is way too loose with the original setup, then we'll go ahead and move that 3-3 to the other corner that we need to move it to and see how that works. And if not, then we may end up buying a 4th 4-5 shock just to make sure that we are even across, basically, and hope that we're pretty close. You know, I'm assuming that the 4-5s are about as close as you can get to the original Bilstein setup, so I'm sure that's why a lot of guys are going with that. It sucks because these shocks are $210 a piece, assuming that your dealer has any in stock. Plus it's like 40 bucks just for this and this, you know, the whole coilover kit, because we ended up messing ours up last year pretty significantly because we pulled a bolt off. We pulled the head off of it as we were tightening it down, and unfortunately couldn't extract it very well, so we had to get a whole new coilover kit on our right front shock. So we were out 40 bucks there, but hopefully none of these need to be rebuilt. Hopefully the 2 right side shocks we had that did leak, hopefully those retained enough gas on the inside to where it didn't completely mess up their configuration. And so now we'll go ahead and get these thrown into the bucket and take them up to Leary. Hopefully he can get those dynoed for us pretty quickly and tell us whether or not we need to send them off. And you know, if we need to, hopefully it's soon enough that we can get them back before our season starts. I'm really not sure what the turnaround time is for rebuilds right now, and I honestly hope to never find out, but I know I'll probably find out at some point in the future, and it'll probably be a good idea for us to get spares anyway. But right now we're trying to keep our overall costs for this year low, since we did spend significantly more than I wanted to last year. If you haven't seen that video on how much we spent, I'll link it right up here in this corner or wherever that information icon is for you guys to watch that and hopefully get an idea of what you're getting into if you decide to race these cars. But for now, we'll go ahead and load these up into our bucket and take these up to Leary's sometime during the week. Now another area we need to focus on for this car is gonna be rebuilding our calipers here, because as of right now, you can see we're not getting much of any rotation right now, and that's because our caliper is squeezing the pads just a little too much and allowing the pads to make contact with the rotor. So there's a constant brake drag going on both sides. And I've been told it's pretty simple to rebuild these Wilwood brake calipers, but I've never actually done it. So hopefully when we go up to Leary's during the week, we'll be able to pick up a couple sets of the Wilwood rebuild kits, and hopefully we'll be able to get these taken care of and refinished, and hopefully we won't have a brake drag issue for the future. And so now obviously we have our pads out and we get a little bit more rotation, probably not the amount that we should be getting with the way that we have our bearings set up, but it's still better than what it was with the pads in the caliper. So we'll obviously get these taken off here, go through them, take a look at them, get them cleaned up and get some new seals on them, and polish up the piston and whatnot. Make sure that whatever is causing the issue isn't because of our negligence. And we do have the caliper shimmed properly to where the rotor sits right in the middle of the slot on the caliper, so I know that's not the issue. And last year I actually replaced these caliper bracket bolts, because these ones are actually fine thread compared to pretty much the rest of the car, and it's on an aluminum bracket, so we just want to make sure everything's clean and proper whenever it goes back on. But I'm thinking that I could probably just get rid of these two bolts here and then these two, and then disconnect it from where the shock meets the lower control arm, and we should be able to pull this off as a whole unit, which ideally is what I would like to do. We may have to modify that as we're working on it, but I'd like to keep this all as one unit for now until we get all of our new rods and everything ordered up if we need to, because this will give us plenty of room to look through the heims and make sure that there's no play in them. Grab our brake pads and get started on that.
When they do what they do, and now I feel like taking off, find a place with a view. The pain is never gonna stop if it's controlling you. I know that time can heal it all, I just gotta get through. Just gotta get through, I just gotta get through. Cause I feel like taking off, find a place with a view. The pain is never gonna stop if it's controlling you. I know that time can heal it all, I just gotta get through. Sometimes I feel like all is lost, but I know it's not true. I wanna put up all my walls cause I'm not in the mood, but then I cut myself off from the rest of the room.
So we just decided to take the liberty of doing the right front off camera while we were already at it. This is just so that we weren't putting up redundant content, because the left front is literally identical to the right front. It's just a mirror copy. So all the left front suspension is just held on by these two bolts here towards the rear of the front clip. That'll hold your upper and lower sections. And then you've got this bolt right here on the shock tower, not to be confused with where the shock actually connects to the shock tower. This is where our upper connects to the shock tower. And then way back in here, you can see where my hand is on this bolt. That's where the lower connects to the cross member. And then this section right here connects to the low end over there on the lower. And this connects to the spindle. This is what controls the steering. So honestly, not a ton of bolts to go through and do for your entire front suspension. Obviously, it's the same setup over here, just on the opposite side. So now we have both our right front and our left front suspension setup over here, just kind of sitting on the floor, trying to keep the pressure off the ball joints. But honestly, we're probably just going to replace those anyway during the off season, because they do look pretty grimy right now and probably not in the best shape. So go ahead and replace those more than likely, but now's a good chance for us to go through. You'll want your spherical bearing on these heims to be pretty taut, but still move freely enough to where they're not seized. And we'll go ahead and check all of these, make sure that they all move relatively freely no binding, but not so free that it's not holding any tension. Now, if you guys are wondering what a bad Heim joint looks like, you can see this one is moving around way too freely. There's no resistance whatsoever. And then I'll try and zoom in, or I'll try and get this in focus as best as possible, but you'll actually see that there is end play. So even though this end play is very minimal, it's enough to cause your suspension to be unpredictable and could potentially cause a wreck from you losing control. I know it may not seem like a lot, but everything is magnified on the track, so you definitely want to make sure all of your Heims are at the very least free of play at all times. One thing I want to look at is actually going to be our brake pads here, because I'm assuming these are the compound that came with the car, or it's possible I could have gotten a relatively older set from the dude who I bought the car from, but we're going to go ahead and take some measurements of these pads real quick just to see, and we're just going to take these measurements. We're going to take them in metric. So this pad is currently reading 10.85 millimeters thick, and then this one is 10.77. So these ones were off of our left front. So these ones are relatively pretty close to even wear there. I'm not super worried about those. But these ones, I don't know how easily you can tell on camera, but these ones are visually different in terms of how they wore. And if you put them on a table, you could definitely feel how different it is. And it almost feels like this particular pad right here on the left, for me, wore unevenly. So go ahead and take our measurement here. This guy's reading at 9.72. We're gonna move up a little bit and look at that. That one is reading at a 9.57 right now. So definitely something going on with this particular caliper. I'm sure this one, the brake drag was pretty severe on it, so I can't imagine that the issue wasn't there on this. But this pad is reading at 10.55 and 10, so definitely seeing some issues on our right front caliper here. So that's the one that is most definitely going to be rebuilt, and you can tell that we need to do a better job about keeping these clean as well, because the pads are supposed to slide along these, and if this is all dirty, it's not going to do a great job on sliding back and forth on those caliper pins. So that's really all I wanted to go over on the car today. I wanted to make sure our shocks were ready to take up to Denver so we could just drop them off and have them ready to get dyno tested. We just want to make sure that if those need to be rebuilt before the season starts, we have the best opportunity to get them back and send them out to AFCO to get them rebuilt. We also just wanted to make sure that we can get the front suspension taken off and go through all the Heims and radius rods and make sure everything's good to go with those, or we'll have to go through and replace whatever we need to replace. Obviously, we're gonna go through the whole car and do every single bolt, replace all of them, but we're definitely gonna try and look for some Willwood rebuild kits while we're up at our dealer, because you can see that our right front is pretty terrible right now and wearing so unevenly that it's pretty gross. And we might as well rebuild the left one while we're at it, because who knows when the last time it was rebuilt. Although if our dealer doesn't have any in stock for whatever reason, we'll have to order that online, and that'll likely push the rebuild of our calipers back till after the New Year's, just because we're probably gonna be gone during that little 2-week stretch between Christmas time and New Year's. So I'm not sure if we'll have videos out during that time, but we'll try our best to have a couple of them for you. But like I said, that's all I really wanted to get to on this car for today. As long as we continue to make progress like this, I think we'll be in good shape for the new season. But I definitely appreciate you guys following along. Thanks for watching, and hope to catch you in the next one.
Said you felt that way, and guess you're trying to stay strong and